Everyone's got that one car that they love that would be great if it just had more power. You can try adding exhaust, cams, boost, but at the end of the day, some engines just can't take the power without some serious work. That is where engine swaps come in. But which engine do you use? Do you go with the JDM tank that can handle more pressure than Michael Jordan? Or do you go with the all-American featherweight that can be found in anything from trucks to Corvettes? We're talking JZs and LSs. For those who don't know these two engines, let me paint you a word picture. The JZ motors are an import tuner's wet dream. They are designed to handle more boost and more abuse than anything else. They're a go-to engine for drifters and drag racers alike. There are half a dozen different variations, but the 1JZ GTE and the 2JZ GTE are the main ones we're looking at.
2JZ engine, no shit.
And what did I tell you?
On the other hand, the LS has dozens of different versions. It's a good old American V8. It's got more aftermarket and factory support than any other engine, and it can make good power straight out of the box. Chevy released it in 1997, and they're still making it today. If you've got a favorite out of one of these two engines, stick around because we might just change your mind. And if you don't know a thing about JZs and LSs, we have done all the research for you to take a look at as many pros and cons as we can. We've got 5 rounds: cost and availability, swap simplicity, power, reliability, and culture. Let's get into round 1. In round 1, we'll be looking at the actual cost of these engines, what it takes to get one, and what you'll need before dropping it in your car. JZ engines are plentiful. They're found in sought-after cars like the Supra, but also the Soarer, Chaser, Aristo, and Crown. Most are JDM though, and I mean that literally. They were mainly sold for the Japanese domestic market. So if you're really lucky, you can find the USDM model from the Supra Mark IV that actually made more stock horsepower than the VVTi one in Japan. Hey, yeah, America, we got a cool thing from Japan for once. Demand means that there are plenty of importers, but on your way down to that importer, you're probably gonna trip over 4 LS blocks. The LS is still on a hot streak of over 20 years of production, where GM has made and sold over 5 million vehicles with LS engines. They made them in 4.8 liter iron blocks, they made them in 7 liter Corvette form, they even made them in a front wheel drive version. A truck LS can be found for under $500 at a wreckage yard and can make over 270 horsepower stock. While you can technically find JZs at that price, they're the naturally aspirated ones and they make less than 200 horsepower. Looking at a mid-range price, the 1JZ GTE VVTi can be found for a little over $2,000. You won't find one of these at a junkyard though. It's gonna be a trip down to your local JDM importer. For that price, you'll get a checked over engine with an auto trans, all putting out that Japanese calling card number of 276 horsepower. If you start cranking up the boost, you can kiss 400 horsepower before really having to make any changes. If you throw similar money at an LS, you're likely to find a 5.7 liter LS1. You'd be getting more stock power than the 1JZ, anywhere from 300 to 350 horsepower. When it comes to this price range on the LS, there are so many combinations. You can mix and match that GM small block to fit your budget. LS are so common that you can get replacement parts down the street at AutoZone. For the JZ, you're gonna be waiting on import parts for weeks. But what if you're not shopping at AutoZone? What if you're a big spender and can afford the finer things in life? For a 2JZ GTE non-VVTi, you can find one in good condition for under $5,000. This is the Supra Mac Daddy, the one that's ready to be boosted out of its mind. It comes with a sequential twin turbo setup, but most people that are chasing big power pull those off for one big turbo. It might only have a little over 300 horsepower stock, but you do not buy one of these for stock power. But if we eliminate the cost of the swap itself, you'll still need some cash set aside for the aftermarket parts to get big power out of this engine. Big turbo kits for the 2J can be found as low as $2,500, but you've also got to spend a bit on fueling and cooling. Once it's all said and done though, you'll be making 700 horsepower easily, to the wheels. And you'll be something like 10 grand out of pocket. If you want to spend top dollar on an LS, the process is a little bit different. Chevrolet has a crate engine program where you can buy almost any engine right from the factory, even small block 350s like the carbureted ones. There is a special LS in this catalog that you won't find in any production car, the LSX. The LSX 376 is an iron block designed for boost applications, and the 454 is a 7.4-liter behemoth ready to put out over 600 naturally aspirated horsepower. So, what does it take to get one of these into your project car? Well, the LSX 454 is listed at over $12,000 US, and unlike the engines we've already mentioned, it won't come with any useful extras. No trans, no intake manifold, no throttle body, no oil pan, no water pump, no flywheel, and no wiring harness. So, now you know how to get your hands on one of these engines and what it'll cost. The LS can be found literally anywhere. You can get them in running cars, in junkyards, and even new from the factory. The JZs, though, were decently mass-produced. Importers are making it easier to get your hands on them, and the blocks in the NA ones are still useful. If you want to learn more about LS engines, check out this episode of Wheelhouse we did on them. After you're done with that, check out more videos at Donut, because we have new videos coming out every day. That's right, every day is a new episode, till the end of time, every day. What's sleep? Round 2, swap simplicity. You've been getting pretty confident in wrenching lately. You just put an axle-back exhaust on your Datsun, and now you want to do the next most logical move, the next mod in the list of things to do, an engine swap. Good for you. In this round, we are going to look at just how hard it is to swap one of these bad boys into your car. Now, not all swaps are the same, so we looked at as many swaps as we could to get a general idea of the pros and cons of each engine. The first thing that you're going to need to get that engine into your car is to make sure it fits. Side by side, these two engines are about the same height and depth. This is one of the biggest benefits of the LS. It's got double the displacement of the JZ engines for similar dimensions. Where the two engines start to really differ is in the width. You would think that the V configuration of the LS would be wider than the i6, and in an NA setup you'd be right. But you're not running an NA 2J, are you? You want them boosty boys. With stock turbos, an assembled 2JZ is over 7 inches wider than the average LS. Also, with a turbocharged engine, there's just more pieces that are going to go into the engine bay. You'll need to consider if the turbos need to get clocked for clearance and how cooling is going to mount up. On top of that, you've got less oil pan options with the JZ, so you'd better get one of them to fit. But if your engine can fit, then you're one step closer. The next thing you're going to need is a transmission. The LS is an evolution of the Chevy small block, and as such, it has trans options dating back to the 60s. If you're building a resto mod and you want a 3-speed, you can. I'm not sure how well it would work, but it would fit. For both engines, the most common 6 speeds are about the same. Both the T56 for the LS and the Toyota R154 can be bought new from the factory for about $3,000 and hold about 700 foot-pounds of torque. The LS does have stronger offerings if you want to go 5-speed or automatic, and cheaper prices too. If you really want to break the bank and break 1,000 horsepower though, the 6-speed V160 Getrag fits natively to the 2JZs, but used, it'll cost you between $6,000 and $10,000. That's way too much, I hear you say? Well, the CD009 out of the 350Z can actually hold 1,000 horsepower, and it'll bolt to either engine with available kits. Though, it looks like the LS kits are a bit more expensive. Also, the Aisin AR5 out of the Pontiac Solstice is a really good cheap option for both of these if you swap the bell housing. Motor mounts and swap kits are really common for both these engines as well, but the LS has a few more prefabbed options and chassis to fit. Tuning-wise, the LS is definitely easier. Most LS swaps are NA builds, which takes some complication out of tuning a standalone ECU and makes it easier to use a stock ECU if you want. To add to that, the variable valve timing in the JDM 2Js adds a bit of tuning to the workday. Not a lot, but not nothing. And some LSs have VVT as well, but you're a little more likely to not have to deal with it. These engines have great support for swaps, and it's obvious why they're chosen for so many builds. Round 3, power. These two engines are known for their power, and in this round, we are going to find out exactly who makes the most power. But before we start throwing a bunch of high horsepower numbers at you, let's look at how these two engines actually make their horsepower in the first place. The LS, at first glance, shouldn't be able to make much horsepower. It has a single cam inside the block. This is archaic technology that limits the amount of valves you can have. But Chevy combat this in two ways. One, The heads on the LS are some of the most efficient heads around, and 2, the cam core is so big that the cam lobes themselves can be bigger while still being gentle. With no need for overhead cams, this makes the engine relatively small, and means more space is given to actual displacement, like the LS7 at 7 liters and 505 horsepower. Most versions of the LS have an aluminum block, which is lighter than the cast iron block, and also better at dispersing heat. The trade-off with aluminum is usually that they aren't as rigid. This is one of the main reasons 2JZs are so popular. The LS bottom ends can't quite match up with the JZ block, but they are no slouches. Built LS iron blocks have seen 25 pounds of boost, but a built 2JZ iron block can see double that. So now that we are a little more educated in the ways of the JZ and the LS, how much power can these engines actually make? Take a look around the internet and you'll find all kinds of claims. 2100 horsepower Supras, 3000 horsepower Corvettes, and loose motors that say they'll make even more if you give some guy on eBay 100 grand. But for our 100% accurate, super scientific comparison, I'm looking for wheel horsepower numbers in actual cars that have been proven on a dyno and are running a built bottom end, not a billet bottom end. The highest horsepower run for an LS that we were able to verify comes from LS Fest Las Vegas 2019. If you watch car videos on the internet, you've probably already seen Leroy the Savage. He's a stripped down skeleton of a Corvette running a twin turbo LS that was originally a 5.3 liter block. With 27 pounds of boost, it put down 1,352 horsepower in less than ideal conditions. It was head and shoulders over anything else to hit the dyno that week. For the 2JZ, the highest verifiable numbers come from Vijay Rimkasoon, whose Supra Mark IV put down 1,636 horsepower using 57 pounds of boost, E98 fuel, and a 200 shot of nitrous. Granus Racing say they have a run at 1,741 horsepower, but couldn't film it because they had to sit on the back end of the Supra to kill the wheel spin. Send us a dyno sheet, dude. That's awesome. Now you may see numbers that are way higher than these, especially in drag racing builds, but they are on billet bottom ends, and that's just not the same engine anymore. It's the same way that like a NASCAR is a Camry. These are insane numbers, and they're cool, but for anyone that is looking for an easy project, an NALS isn't likely to exceed 650 horsepower, and a 2JZ on stock internals can handle more, but if you put on the wrong parts or a lean tune, you can break stuff below 500 horsepower. Got a favorite so far? Well, we've still got 2 more rounds to go. Round 4, reliability. So now that you've seen these engines make some face-melting numbers, can they actually sustain that? In this round, we're gonna look at how tough these engines really are and what it takes to break them. LS engines are so enjoyably simple. Without any mods, it's a viable way to make power. And if your goal is 400 horsepower, getting an LS motor that can just do that out of the box is gonna have way less issues than a JZ, especially if you don't know much about what you're doing. But LS engines aren't perfect. They have a few flaws that can be made worse if you don't do your research. The LS has a notoriously short deck, and if you're gonna put a crank in from a larger engine or a stroker kit, there's a good chance that the stroke will now be too long for the cylinder sleeves. This can wear out the cylinder skirts and cause oiling issues. If you're gonna play with this engine like Lego, you might want a tall deck block like the one from the LS7. Also, GM had a different supplier for the cylinder heads on the 5.3 liter engines. A lot of those are prone to cracking. And the oil pump has been known to cavitate if you're over 6,000 RPM for a long time, like you might be in a drift build. This might sound like I'm being really picky and listing unique cases, but that's just because this engine is so capable to begin with that the comparison point is really high. But the 2JZ takes that comparison point and punts it down the field. The parts outside the engine, like the turbo and the radiator, are gonna fail long before the 2J. The JZs don't use rocker arms or push rods like the LS. The cams push directly on bucket lifters that are basically just like solid hunks of metal. The JZs also have amazing oil drain back, which stops the oil from pooling anywhere and helps keep that iron block cool. It's a non-interference engine, so even if you snap a timing belt, the valves and the pistons can't physically hit each other. You can bounce the thing off the rev limiter all day long, and as long as you don't have your rev limiter set high enough to give you valve float, you can beat the snot out of this thing. The only way to really kill a 1JZ or 2JZ is to run it too lean. If you cheap out on your fueling system or get a clogged fuel injector, you can heat up those cylinder walls real quick. But 2JZ owners want to run rich anyway and shoot big old fireballs, am I right? JZs are some of the engines that made Toyota the standard of reliability and can live beyond 300,000 miles. When it comes to standard maintenance, JZs do have a tendency to let water get into the spark plugs if you get too excited with the hose. Also, the VVTi models can manifest a rough idle with the stock ECU. The biggest downside of the JZ is that you have to get them used. Even though 2JZs are pretty foolproof, you should never underestimate the ingenuity of complete fools, like me. And you don't know who had that engine before you. Maybe it was me. There have been rumblings about Toyota selling 2JZ crate engines. Through Gazoo Racing, they're selling some brand new Mark III and Mark IV Supra parts like door handles and brake boosters, but it's most likely just wishful thinking that they'd ever build a 1J or 2J again. I can't get over how straightforward an LS swap seems. Even though 100 people have put them in 240Zs, I want to do that. I want to leave this studio / my house and go do that right now. But the 2JZ makes whooshy noises, and I've been a Toyota guy my whole life, so sticking that in like a 70s Corolla seems like the perfect resto mod to me. Round 5, culture. One of the best things about being a car galler guy is meeting people that love the same thing that you do. For the last round, we are gonna look at the culture that surrounds these two engines. Straight away, these are very different cultures. The LS is hot rodding and American muscle, but the JZ is JDM royalty blasting down a Tokyo expressway. At meetups, JZ owners might oblige a crowd with a tender serenade of two-step. While an LS connoisseur might provide the audience with a sample of donuts. LS engines are so popular and easy to build that they kind of transcend any cliche owner. You've got the boomer modernizing their family Chevelle, but you've also got the JDM guys with their 240s, the Euro guys with their BMWs. LS swaps are practical and they're the sensible choice. But if you shove it in a ridiculous chassis, it can also be one of the most unique cars on the road. But if the LS is like being part of a big family, then the JZ engines are like being part of a secret club. If a stranger tells you they have a 2J engine, you immediately picture 3 a.m. drag races and running from the cops. JZ engines are a forbidden fruit. For LS owners though, there is one meetup that dwarfs just about every other kind of organized meet. Holly LS Fest. With both an East and West event in the US, LS Fest is an opportunity for all kinds of LS owners to come together for a whole weekend and take part in all kinds of events. Whether your car came with an LS from the factory or had one swapped in, you can compete in autocross, drifting, drag racing, dyno challenges, even off-road races. There's also burnout boxes and even a car show on site. If you have ever been curious about the LS engine, this is the place to go and ask questions. In 2018, LS Fest East had over 1,000 cars registered and over 20,000 people in attendance. The JZs have Supra and Toyota meetups, but it's not like there's a JZ Jamboree or anything. Again, the JZ and the LS are great platforms. Both communities are fun and make me want to join. But LS Fest is something so unique, no other engine has anything like it. Now, normally I'm a JDM fan, and the 2JZ absolutely crushed it in power and reliability. But with LS engines being so easy to find, install, and build decent power on, it's no secret why they are the best engine swap option. Plus, maybe getting one will help me make some friends, so yeah. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to Donut Media, follow Donut Media on Instagram and Twitter. Do you have a dyno sheet that proves that your car is faster than the ones we found? Post it and tag us. I'm Joey Rassool, and I'll see you guys next week.